day 3, and in day 3, we're starting at unit 5. So in other words, if you look on your sheet, we're starting right over here, unit 5. Hello, Carol, and that's where joints is. So we'll start here. Joints. This is under the field category, which is technique. And just as a recap, technique for me is not like scales and arpeggios. Technique is literally how are we moving at the piano? What are we physically doing? And so this joints concept. The concept is just to understand the difference between like, okay, how do I move from my knuckle? How do I move from my wrist? It's to get their brain able to, switch gears, you could say, and focus on the different parts of the body individually. And so one of the things that I'll do, and you can do this in there, well, I'll get to that. And the first way that I introduce it is very simply, and actually I can introduce a lot of concepts this way, it's just a C major 5-finger scale, right? Very easy. And I often do that because I want to take away any of the other difficulties like harmony, and I don't want them to have to think about anything but the technique. And so I'll do the C5-finger scale, and the exercise kind of goes like this. You lift. We're going to start with the knuckle, and you can go ahead and try this at the piano too. And you start with just the knuckle, and we're going to lift from the finger, lift up, play, release, lift up, play, release. And notice when I do this, I am not moving any other joint. I'm keeping everything completely still. And I know that for piano playing, this is like not a good habit. I know you're supposed to keep everything loose, but the whole point of here is that we are learning to control each individual joint. Then after you do that, lift only from the wrist. And so notice my knuckles now are completely still. Lift, play, lift, play, lift, play, lift, play. And then I'm going to keep all of this nice and still, and then I'm going to move from the elbow. And then from the shoulder. Get them used to moving from these different joints. And then you can start to introduce some combinations like, let's lift from here and from the wrist. Or, lift from the finger and from the wrist. Or lift from the finger and from the elbow. Or lift from the finger and from... Or just do all of it. Right? We're going to flex everything and play. So, different combinations of all of these. And then, of course, after you get comfortable doing it in that little exercise, that's when you can start to introduce it into, the actual pieces that you're playing and play around. I approach technique very experimentally in that every situation calls for a slightly different movement, obviously. And so, lifting a finger, for example, might work here, but it might not be great for when you're playing, I don't know, like Rachmaninoff or something, right? It's hard to get that really full sound when you're just lifting from the joints, from the knuckle, I mean. So, I encourage my students to experiment with like, okay, well, what's going to be the most comfortable here? If I lift mostly from the wrist, if I lift here, if I do a combination. And so they can experiment with the different moving from the different joints in every situation, and then help them decide or help them to understand which generally feels most comfortable to everyone. So, all right, and then the level 5, the unit 5 concept for here is pitch, but with training wheels. And so what I mean here is this is a lot about being able to sing in tune without the help of the piano. And so, so far we've covered just basically, how do I move my voice up and down? How do I generally match pitch? And so at this point, you can assume that the student is able to kind of generally, sing a tune and stay in tune. But can they do it without any guidance is really the big question. So let's say they're singing, Mary Had a Little Lamb or something, right? Mary had a little lamb. And so what I try to do is I try to wean them off of needing the piano. And so this helps because they can hear the note. But you might start taking notes away. Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. So notice, I started to go a little off tune there on purpose, and then I brought the piano back in when I noticed they started to kind of get a little bit off. And so you can do this. And then, once they get really comfortable with singing in tune without the use of the piano, you can actually take that to the next level. And this kind of is overlap into reading, but you can start having them try sight singing a little bit. And so throw some pieces out there and throw some pieces their way and see, using some of the techniques, like soft. Well, we'll have to go over solfege at some point, but like solfege or numbers. We'll get to numbers today, I think. But yeah, so training wheels. All right, and then the read concept for Unit 5 is, and for those of you just who weren't here, I like to use my whiteboard a lot. And then you can just use, like, if you don't have a whiteboard, you can just use regular blank paper, or you can use, if you're on Zoom, you can share your screen, and you can use, like, the whiteboard on Zoom or anything like that. And so what I'm going to go over here, this is like the music tree in that at this point, we've went over the direction of notes, we've went over letters and all of that, off staff notation, and then we're going to work our way into partial staff, which means, like, I'm going to give you one. Hold on, let me actually. It would be, there we go, straight line. Da da da. Okay, one line, and I actually think it's okay to start to introduce. You could say partial staff, but grand staff, and so and you don't have to put the whole symbols on there or anything. Like, just all you have to do is just say, all right, this is right hand, and this is left hand. And do I think finger numbers are important here? No, and you'll see that we get to that very soon. We cover that idea in soon. And so we've got this. You can write a little piece for them, or you can write a piece that they know, like. Well, actually, I'm sorry. No, here in this concept, we focus mostly on just repeated notes, right hand, left hand, and together, that kind of thing. So, in other words, I might draw something like this. So, no time signature yet. Bum, bum, bum. But they do know some rhythms. So we'll do this. Oh, hold on, another person, and then. Give me a second. Boom, boom. Do 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 do. Bum, bum. And just all of these have a line. Okay. Now the cool thing is, with this kind of reading, you can just decide, all right, what letter are we going to start on? We're going to start on Ja, or G. as you know it. And then in the left hand, we'll start on sa, or si, as you know it. And so, whatever finger you want, you have them go. You can even do this off the keyboard for a second. You can go right, left, right, both, both, both. And so, if you put this on the piano, you get. And we're reading that at the same time. And so this establishes a few different concepts where we're focusing on, all right, the top is right hand, the bottom is left hand usually. And we're going, okay, we're reading both lines at the same time. That makes sense now. And notes can happen at the same time too. I can play both hands. And so feel free to try this. You can also do different combinations, right? So like you can do, you can, it's being annoying. Hold on. There we go. You can move this over. Oh, I see. Okay, well, you get the idea. You can do different combinations. I usually do this on my whiteboard, so I'm not so super comfortable with these controls. But yeah, okay, so many different combinations of this. Just get them used to this kind of reading. If you want it to sound even cooler, just put some pedal in there. Okay, and then, oh, hi, Stephanie. And, all right, and then mix it up, tries up different combinations, different rhythms. You can read it on the top edge that we were talking about. Top edge, as a recap to anyone who wasn't here, it's kind of like if you've heard you've probably seen this whole ta ti ti ta ta ti ti ta, that kind of thing. Top edge is a lot like that, but I give different titles to each note. I do ta is quarter note. To is a half note. Tu is a whole note. Te is eighth note, and T is a 16th note. And so you got, T, te, ta, to, tu. And to me it makes sense because it's like E is like a very harsh, sharp sound. And so I just think like, oh, it's shorter. And tu is like, I just imagine like a cow, like moo, making like a long sound. So it makes sense to be the long note to me. And of course, oh, I forgot to mention, yeah, and then you can have them compose using this method too, just the two-line method. And what note gets the beat? I don't know what I meant by that. Ignore that comment. We'll come back to it. I originally wasn't going to do a PowerPoint slide, and I sort of decided to do this last minute little PowerPoint, so pardon me for any weird things that might happen. So, okay, holding bass notes under create. And so, I mean, this is like, you can think of this as like an intro to lead sheet reading. And so, but without the lead sheet necessarily. And so what you could do is you could give them a preset progression. And so let's say, your preset progression is going to be, let's say, sa, la, fa, ja. And so there you have in your left hand, what you have to do is you have to play C, A, F, G. But I want you to hold those notes out for a while. Then go to the next one. And I say meter optional because again, it's about removing any other difficulties. Let's forget about rhythm here for a second and just focus on the order and the harmony. Okay. Now I'm doing this on white keys, and then in the right hand, let's say you can play anything you want, and it doesn't even have to be a great sound. I just want you to focus on holding that bass note while you do a bunch of dings in the right hand. When you're ready, move to the A. when you're ready, go to the fa. So they're getting this idea of like, okay, I can do things in both hands at the same time. And a lot of the times, like when you get into some lychees, for example, you don't even have to do anything more complicated than that. You can just hold the bass note, like, except it'll go slower, right? So, what's a better example? I don't know, I just made that up, but like okay, better example. I always, if you've been in the past 2 days, you'll know I keep going back to Fight Song for it's like it's just a perfect example for everything that I'm doing right now. So like and it's just a song I got stuck in my head. So this is my fight song. Right? Sounds fine if you're just doing a bass note and melody. Um, and then now you can do this also on obviously you won't it won't be the same letters, but you can do it on white keys or black keys. And so like you can just draw a diagram for them if you want, if you are not comfortable, if they're not comfortable yet with the solfege of black keys. Like I would call this well, you can say, you don't even need to use solfege, but say or C sharp, le or A sharp, and so on. Right, so you can draw the diagram for them, and then just say use any black keys. And again, it doesn't have to be in time. I just happen to be counting in my head. They can take as long as they want. So, there we go. Mouse, there we go. Okay. Moving on. So, read one line. Oh, I went the wrong way. Okay. Play metronome tactics. Okay, so now, whereas in the last exercise, we took rhythm out of the picture. We said, no, let's forget about that for a second. In this practice technique, we are now focusing very specifically on keeping time. And so with the metronome, when I was growing up, I was taught a very specific practice method with the metronome. And it's this first bullet point right here, which, if I just pull up my metronome real quick. By the way, my favorite metronome to use is Pro Metronome. It looks like this. Try and get not the glare on it. There we go. Kind of looks like that. And Pro Metronome is just awesome. It's nice and loud, so if you have a loud piano, then you can make the metronome louder than the piano. It's free. It goes as slow as 10 beats per minute. Goes as fast as let me find out. I'm still going. Let's see, for 500. It goes as fast as 500 beats per minute. And obviously, I don't think you're ever going to use that, but but
One more time. Can you say that one more time? The name of it, because I've been looking for one. What was it called? Pro Metronome.
yes, Pro Metronome. Yeah, it's fantastic. And the thing that I find especially useful on here is you can change which beats are stronger. And so there are these bars. So like right now I've got it so beat 1 is stronger. But I can change it where all the beats are even volume. And so I find that to be very, very practical. You can change the time signature if you want. You can change a whole bunch of things. So and all for free. There is a paid version where you can do more complicated things, but you won't need to do the more complicated things. Now back to what I was saying though with the metronome tactics is the first thing that I learned, which I do teach it as one strategy, is when they're practicing anything, it doesn't even have to be sheet music, right? Let's do, we're going to practice it at, for example, Um, oh, I don't know. Tony, give me a song. Any song.
Fight song. Do you know that one?
Yeah, oh, I do. Okay, sure. Yeah. So, okay, so let's say I'm practicing fight song. Right. And I'm just practicing a section. I do it 3 times. One more time, and oh, hold on, I didn't start on time. You know what? Let me do that 3 more times. Right? And so, if they make a mistake, then they kind of have to like do it. So, 3 times in a row, three good. And once they get it 3 times in a row, they can be as harsh as they want on themselves. And so my teachers were super harsh on me and said you're only allowed to go 2 beats per minute faster. And so I went 2 beats per minute faster. And the good thing about this, obviously, is that you don't notice that it's going faster. And so by the time you get to 30 beats faster, you're like, you don't even feel the difference. Now, with my students, I'm a little bit more lenient. I let them go, anywhere from, depending on the piece, 5 to like 10 beats faster, because I know how impatient, I'm impatient too. It's so we're impatient together. Now, next bullet point here, something that I do with my students that I wasn't really taught to do, but I realized the value of is to also practice the extremes with the metronome. And so, um, what, so while this is a good tact to gradually building up speed, it's also really good to practice at the fastest possible tempo that you can play in small sections, and also to practice at the slowest possible tempo you can play. When you practice fast, really fast, your technique is going to change. And you're going to realize that something that you were doing in the slow speed, you can't really do at the fast speed. So if you were doing something like this, let me point this down a little bit. Actually, let me stop sharing my screen so you can see better. So, if you were doing this, for example, and this is, again, C5 finger scale, it's a perfect thing to show, like, technique. So I do, okay, do these nice big gestures, right? But if I do that as fast as I can, notice the technique changes. I'm not doing a bounce or on every single note. I'm doing one swift motion. And so my point is tempo changes technique. And so it's important to practice at those fast as possible speeds so that when you do go back to your slow speed, you're playing it with the same movement that you would in the fast speed. Yes, slow motion is different than slow. Yes, I say slow motion too, to my students too, Clinton. And then now the very, very slow speed is also super important because you'll notice the slower you go, the more you have to think. And so something that you think you might have memorized, if you go super slow, you'll catch those spots that you really don't have memorized, or you'll have more things to focus on, more time to focus on. Hey, what is my finger? What is that? What exactly is the angle of my hand? What is the next note? Okay. Oh, it's D, right? Oh, I didn't let go of the other note. So you have more time to think about more things. So when you yeah, okay. And now the one last thing, I don't know if you guys experience this. You probably do, but with my own students, I noticed that there's a lot of students who, the longer that they are playing with the metronome, the less they focus on the metronome. And so they might start off playing with the metronome, but then after 30 seconds, things start to go off track and they start to play at their own tempo. And so one of the things I do with the metronome is I build the endurance of being able to listen to the metronome. And so, I might throw the metronome on and go, all right, we're going to just play a C major scale on repeat. And um, we're going to do this for a minute straight. So I want you to be with the metronome the whole time for that entire minute. Okay. So I'm timing you. Ready? And I keep going for the entire minute. And it just allows them to, again, take away all of the extra hard stuff and just focus on like, okay, metronome is the most important thing right now. And then I did this the other day, literally with one of my students. He's like 8 years old or something, and he was playing like one of his own arrangements of what's this one called? What is that one? He was playing his own arrangement of that. And this kid is like a genius. I don't for 8 years old, and he was playing that, and he was doing with the metronome. He just was having such a hard time, and I did this exercise with him. And then the second that I went back and played I had him play his arrangement. I was like, remember that feeling of how hard you were focusing on the metronome the whole entire minute, and it was like significantly better. Way more with the metronome that time. So practicing focus is super, super important. Focus is like a muscle. Okay, moving on to Unit 6 of Level 1. Dynamics. Now, dynamics is something I put into the feel category, technique category, because how loud you play depends on how you move. And so, much specifically, how loud you play is speed plus weight. And so the speed at which you hit the key and also the weight, right? I'm dropping. So now if I want to play soft, then I go slow and very gentle. Slow and gentle. Okay? If I want to play super loud, I put a lot more weight in there, so I might come up a little bit from the keys, so I can drop like a hammer, and I play and I move quickly towards the key. Right? So just for fun, this actually relates to some other things too, but something I might do with my students as like a fun little exercise is practice boxing or moving in the boxing. This also comes in handy when a student has to make like a jump really quick on the piano. So if they're doing let's see. When they have to do something like that, where they have to move super quickly across the piano. But it also helps with dynamics. I practice boxing with them because, like, I basically tell them, like, if you throw a punch like this, hold on, I'll stop sharing my screen. If you throw a punch like this, is that going to hurt your opponent? No. It's going to feel very gentle. But if you do this really quickly, that's what's going to be effective. And so I get them used to this motion of like, okay, out of nowhere you can move super quick, right? And so this helps with some certain things. And then at the same time, you can also teach another thing that, and this is kind of a different topic, but I thought I'd mention it. The quickly dodging can also help too. It helps other things. Try it out with your students. You'll notice when there's certain situations where that becomes helpful. So loudness and tension. This is something that can be an issue. Students, when they play soft, they usually are very tension free. But when they play loud, a lot of times what I'll see is we're holding it. And so I try to make sure with my students, let's go back to the C5 finger scale, although you can do this in their pieces too. let's go to the C5 finger scale as my sort of example. Let's play loud, but afterwards, I want to make sure you loosen up your wrist. So hold the note down, but wiggle your wrist around. Okay. Play it loud and then loosen up the wrist. Ready? 3, 2, 1. And then release. Release the wrist. Okay? 3, 2, 1. And release the wrist. So the loud volume can often incite tension, so you're gonna have to address it specifically like that. Cymbals, I do introduce the cymbals too at this point, and normally in like a lot of methods when cymbals get introduced for dynamics, it's usually just like forte and piano that get introduced first. I don't see the point of not introducing all of the cymbals. I think it's fun, and so I just go, hey, if you have 5 Fs, that means really, 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 really loud. If you have MF, you can think of it as M for medium, M for middle, even though technically it means mezzo, right? And so middle forte, medium forte, almost forte. So I think it's fine to introduce all of those dynamic symbols from the start. It's not really that my students they never have any trouble understanding that. Definition versus label. So what I mean here, and it's kind of goes. These 2 points are kind of together, which is well, this is a little bit different, I guess. This is like it doesn't. My point here is I don't care what you call it. I just want you to know what it means. So what does F mean? It means play loud. If you forget what it's called, it's fine. You have a dictionary. You have online. You can look it up. But character versus volume, this one's a little different. So when I introduce dynamics, I also it's not to me, dynamics are not just loud and soft. They're really just the composer's way of saying what is the character of this section. And so when a composer writes forte into a piece, they're depending on the piece, they might be saying, I want this to sound angry. I want this to sound strong. I want this to sound heroic. And so, when I go over this, I might play loud and say, okay, how did that feel to you in that volume? And, they'll give me an answer. That felt like Superman. Or I don't know. So, all right, moving on here. Number song. All right, so before I introduced solfege, and solfege was my equivalent for, it kind of goes hand in hand with like letter names, but it makes letters singable, and then that reminds you of fixed do. And so that's my equivalent for fixed do, basically, but it's more closely tied to letters. And then number song is my equivalent to movable do. And so I understand the point of both methods, you could say, and I like both of them, so I use both of them, but I just am giving them different, more, in my opinion, practical labels. And so number song, here's how it goes. So basically, number song is always tied, at least when I first introduced it, it's always tied to a major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. I also encourage to sing sev instead of seven, just because it's a single syllable. Or like 7, 1. They can kind of slur the V and the N together. I'll do it in a key. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And then now, when you raise or lower a scale degree, when you raise it, you rhyme with that number and use an R. So if I were to do a chromatic scale, for example, chromatic scale would be like this. I'll go up and down so you can see the difference. Raising, you change the sound to R. lower, you change the sound to L. R for raise, L for lower. One, run, two, roo, three, four. Obviously, there's no three, re, because, past that. Four, roar, five, rive, six, rick, sev, one. One, sev, lev, six, licks, five, lie, four, three, lee, two, loo, one. And the students can have a lot of fun with this, especially when they realize that, four raised is roar. Roar. So it's a lot of fun. Now, but I will say at this level, I don't introduce L or R yet. We just do the basic numbers, just because unless they can handle it, if they're it's kind of your decision. But we will when I introduce it, I do allow for modes because if they're really young, and I said this before in a previous session, if they're really young, their range might be limited to like literally D to A, and so it gets pretty boring if the only thing you're doing is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's it. And so you can think when you're giving them examples in modes like I think when I play that, I'm thinking of like Mixolydian mode. But when you do a mode, like I said, when I first introduce it, I would still do one belongs to major, and so and this is to avoid L and R. So well, let's say that was. Let's call this D Dorian. If I were to introduce L and R, then it would be 4 Li 2 1, 4 Li 2 1. But that's a little too much for a younger student to think about, so I would just introduce that as a mode instead, and let's say it's a mode of C major. 5 4 3 2, 5 4 3 2. That way they can just stick to numbers, the regular numbers. All right, and then something else now you might consider is introducing the 7-1 overlap. And so let's do G major, for example. And I'm going to give you an example. In this case, tell them which one is 1. Let's say G is 1. That means, hey, what happens if we go down? There's no 0. We have to go to sev. 1 sev 6 5, 1 sev 6 5. So it can be really important to address that going backwards past 1, so that you don't run into that issue later on where it gets confusing. So that way they understand, hey, these numbers can go all over the piano. All right, and I forgot to mention also to anyone who wasn't here, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to put that into the chat, and I'm going to get to that after I'm done. We've got 3 more concepts, and then I'll have a little bit of time for questions. So yeah, go ahead and put that in the chat if you have any questions. All right, so last time we did 1 line with read, and now we're doing 2 lines. And at this point, the last time it wasn't really important to establish the difference between line notes and space notes, but now that we have the option for line notes and space notes, it's good to address it. And you can also start to introduce one hand holding 2 notes at this point. You can, I would say, use white keys only still, or if you do want to use a black key or 2, then you'd probably have to like draw a diagram for them and just make sure they know like, oh, finger 2 is on F sharp or whatever it is. And then if you want to, for fun, you can change what the starting letter is. So let's do a little bit of this. No share. Oops. Okay, so let's see. Undo a lot of this. Okay, so let's say we had 2 lines in each. Oops. I got a little dot. 2 lines. Da da da. All right, and then just for simplicity's sake, I'm gonna only use quarter notes, but you can use any rhythm you want. Okay, so let's just do this. You can do bigger examples, but this is just to save some time. And then all you have to say is, what is your starting letter? We're starting on, let's say, da. Okay, so have them read this. And notice I, in my slide I said you can introduce steps and skips at this point too. I guess I should have included that. But you can do steps or skips. But first I'd say, all right, is this note on a line or is it on a space? Establish that difference. Is this note on a line or a space? Okay, when you move to a line, when you move from a line to a space, that is a step or second, depending on how you like to introduce it. So we've got so down, both. Simple introduction. Some pop songs are very easy to throw on a staff at this point, like Fight Song. This is my. Right, you can do start on E, for example. Easily throw it on E, D, ya, da, sa, sa, sa. Easily fits on the staff. And you, like I said before, you can transpose it too. What if we, instead of starting on D, we start on F, fa? You know, try different spots. Get them to understand that it doesn't matter what letter you start on; it's the intervals that are important. Okay, so go back. Okay. Create. Yeah, okay, bye, Jennifer. And create rhythm focus. And so with this topic, it is about improvisation mostly, but instead of focusing on all of the other, when we did the one note improv, we were focusing on all those other elements, right? Dynamics, expression, all of that. And rhythm, we could do a little rhythm with that, but this is like, let's focus just on rhythm. And so you can plan a rhythm in that you can use that top edge and draw out examples like we did before. Or you can just copy a rhythm by ear. So if I say, for example, and this is from the teacher, if I do this, and let's see, and I say, hey, you can play that rhythm on any letters you want. So they might go, hey, cool, let's try another one. Okay. That's them, the student. So give them a rhythm, they can copy it, or you can just copy it from a song. So let's say, I'm trouble thinking of songs today. Let's see. Why can't I think of songs today? Let's see. What are some good songs? Throw a song in the chat. Any song. Popular songs. Popular songs today. I don't know any of these. That's weird. Oh, because the player's gonna play. Okay, let's do that rhythm. Hey, look, I took it from a pop song. Changed the notes and ta-da, we have something new. And yeah, you can plan it with the top edge. You can try it on one note first, or you can use any scale. Let's just move along to save some time. All right, so the last concept here is about finger choices, which I said I was going to address before. So when you're reading, I avoid when they're reading, when we're first introducing reading, I do try to actually avoid finger choices, which I know is contrary to like popular belief. Um, you know, fingering, yes, it does become very important. But when they're first learning notes, I want them to when they're first learning reading, I want them to focus more on what the notes are and not how to play them physically. So because I noticed that with my students, the issue that I run into a lot is they put priority over finger choices and they forget to actually read what the notes are. And so by the time that your hand has to move around, let's say, the sheet music did this, right? Where they did 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, they might not notice that that the hand was supposed to move, and they might just accidentally do this because they're reading finger numbers. So my point is, I wait to introduce finger choices in reading, and so now doesn't necessarily just pertain to reading. This could be if you're just learning a song by ear too, and I put it into play because it's something they can do when they practice. I want them to think about what fingers they want to use. And then ask themselves, why am I using these finger choices? So I'll do something like this. All right, guys. All right, student. Here's the notes I want you to play. Okay, that's D, E, F sharp, C sharp, D. What fingers do you think are going to work best for this? And they might go, well, if I do finger 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and you know what? That's not my personal choice, but that does kind of work. And they might say, well, I don't have to move my hand if I put my hand if I put it there. Okay, fair enough reason. Can you think of any other ways to play this? Okay, well, 1, 2, 3, or 1, 3, 4, 2, 1. Well, that allows me to stay a little farther back on the keys. A little farther back on the keys, a little bit more of a comfortable position. I'm not putting my fingers in between the keys. So open up this conversation about what finger choices work the best. And then have them write it down, which is also helpful because, resist correcting. You want them to be thinking creatively. You don't want to take that creative choice away from them. Just help them to think through it. Enforce consistency. So whatever this enforces consistency. So when they write down a finger choice, they feel like they own that finger choice. They're going to stick to it more than you telling them what fingers to play. It's in the practice section because it gives them something else to do besides play their piece, and they need breaks from playing when they are practicing. Now, on a personal note, I just want to say there are there's many situations where you are forced into using finger choices that you would consider to be untraditional, and so if a student does something that you don't like 1 on a black key, sometimes let it go, because you might end up being in a situation where you have to do something like that. So if I was doing, right, if I did an octave here and I had to hold the C sharp, I have no choice. I can't reach that with finger 2 here. I have to go 1, 1, 2, 3. So there, you might run into situations where you get awkward fingers like that, and you have to adjust. Okay, so I know I did like all of the talking today, but I knew that it was going to take a while to get through some of these concepts, so I didn't really have time to kind of do many student examples today, but I will open the floor up to questions. I know there was a lot that I went over. So looking through, looks like there's no questions in the chat box, but if you have any questions, you can ask now, and I'll give you just a second to think. In the meantime, while you're thinking, let me remind you that at this, I want you to take one of the things that I went over today, and I want you to try it in one of your lessons today or tomorrow. And then if you come to another session, let me know how it went. And even if you, especially if you saw a concept and you were like, "That's crazy," especially if you saw that and that's what you were thinking, I want you to try it before you knock it. Like cow like cow tongue, or bone marrow. There's a food, bone marrow, that my older brother made me try once, and I was like, heck no, I'm not trying that. But he forced me, and guess what? I liked it. And so might happen with one of these concepts if your initial reaction is like, I don't know. So try it before you knock it. See how it goes, because all of these things that I'm saying, they've worked for me. So, all right. With that being said, no questions. Thanks everyone for coming, and hopefully I see you guys again tomorrow. Tell other teachers, get the word out. I want to make my concepts. I want to get the word out there. So, thanks again, and enjoy your day of teaching.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep.